Okay, then it is 6:30, so I will call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mayor Kratzky, I am here. Moko?
Present.
Groko?
Present.
Kufal is absent tonight. Padilla?
Present.
And Eager.
Here.
From my understanding, we don't have any changes to our agenda, so we'll take a motion to approve the agenda for tonight, March 20th, 2024.
So moved.
A motion by Eager. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to comments, updates, concerns. Do we have any citizens here who would like to speak tonight? Move on to council members. Any updates? And city staff.
I just have a couple quick things I wanted to mention. You'll recall the ordinance that you guys set a public hearing for adjusting the park hours, specifically in reference to the pavilion. You'll recall that. The hearing was actually scheduled for tonight, but we didn't get it advertised in time for tonight, so if it's okay, we'll just reschedule that to the 3rd.
Sure.
Okay. And then I wanted to let you know that in reference to the hailstorm that occurred back in October, the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, they are in the process now of working with a consultant to prepare the plans and specifications for having those roofs on those buildings re-roofed or basically completed. So they're preparing that for bidding purposes. And the way it works is we actually have to, they cannot hire the contractor, they have to, or the consultant, the city has to, and then the league will reimburse us for the fees associated with that. So I just wanted to let you know that I did have to sign an agreement for that. It's 100% reimbursed. The name of the company is Netterveld, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and their fee is going to be $9,500. So I just wanted to give you forewarning that when you see a request for payment come across on our list of bills, that's what it's for. So it's probably about 3 to 4 weeks before we'll be in a position to bid that out, that job, for all those buildings.
Okay, anything else?
That's all I got.
Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda and take a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Eager. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We don't have any public hearings tonight. Communication requests and petitions. There's the food shelf bingo, a soup cook-off, and Tri-County hazardous waste collection. Moving on to department and committee reports and action items. We can move down to 9C under Public Works. Is Ty here? Oh, yep, there he is. And we'll invite Ty up to the podium to talk about a few things.
Good evening, everybody. The first thing I have tonight is the removal of the old water plant. With the upcoming construction, with burying a high power line in that parking lot, redoing the parking lot, Public Works is requesting to get that old water plant removed and out of there. The only thing currently in that plant that's operating is the bulk water fill, and we're gonna relocate that out by the west tower eventually. Remember a couple years ago, we actually refed the power, so instead of going to the old water plant, it actually comes from the, like Tom's shop now, so it's easy to remove. Kind of in anticipation of doing this eventually. And we did get a quote from Circle F Farms for $7,750 to remove that. And that includes the footings, the building, and the sidewalk in between the building and the library. So we're just asking that council approve that request.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the quote from Circle F Farms for $7,750 to remove the old water plant and sidewalk.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Groko, seconded by Moko. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to pavilion tables and chairs.
Yeah, this is gonna be the fun one. I'm gonna let you guys decide on this one, what kind of tables and chairs you want and how many do you want?
Maybe we should have a committee for this. And you can be on it.
I looked at the things, all the options, and I was like, I'm gonna go with what everyone else does, because it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, how do you guys wanna handle it? Do you wanna make a decision tonight, or have a subcommittee?
Maybe that's something that park board can look at and.
If I can get enough of them there, we can make a decision.
Yeah, I think it's always kind of nice to see the product as well, to kind of know what that's going to look like, and it's hard to tell from the pictures. And you are going to want something that's going to have some quality to it so that it
Right.
lasts. And we're not replacing it right away, so I would like someone to be able to look into it a little more.
I'd like to have, if the park board's gonna kinda make that decision, I'd like to have one council member additional for a liaison, so we can kinda move that ahead and forward too, so.
You mean besides Donna? Aren't you on that one?
I can't go to park board because it's the same night as EDA, but we could maybe schedule another time.
Just be on there. If, when are you gonna have it? If it doesn't conflict with one of my other meetings, I can go over there with
Okay.
Chad. So I know what day,
Second Monday,
Second
next month,
Monday.
next month?
Yeah,
April, so then, but then we gotta keep things moving, so we,
right, so they gotta be purchased, cause May 1st is gonna be the opening for rental.
Yeah, I should be able to go over to that meeting.
I think both of these companies that, I know for sure Uline, if you order from them, they're usually, if you order it, they get it to you pretty quick, so.
I'll be in Indiana that day though, so I'm gonna miss that park board meeting. So you're gonna,
I'll be the only.
your plan is backfiring already.
That's why I said I'm leaving it up to council.
Yeah. Once the decision's made, will it have to come, I'm assuming, back in front of council?
Yeah,
So when would our next council meeting be?
17th.
Is prom still planning on being held there this year?
They haven't got back to me yet. They have toured the building, but they haven't got back to me with a final decision on that.
Can we get a staff recommendation by next council meeting, and then council will have a little more direction? Should we go that route, or?
can do that.
Unless you want more meetings?
No.
Okay.
No, I like the idea of a staff recommendation.
All right, I'll
Okay.
skip that one. Saves us a lot of time. The third thing I have is, the fireman shelter renovation. The Gaylord Fire Relief would like to approval to move ahead with the renovation of fireman shelter in Oak Tree Park. The roof itself will be stripped and a new steel roof will be installed. It'll be same color as the bathroom shelter. The concrete inside the shelter will be completely removed and replaced with new, and then the floor, pretty much, it's about a 90% possibility it's gonna be epoxied also once it's cured. The southeast corner, the block wall, that's a half wall, will be completely removed. And they're gonna put a steel beam to support that whole side of the structure, so it'll kind of open up that whole quarter of that shelter, make it a little more inviting. The interior ceiling will be replaced, or will be repainted, as well as the remaining block walls. New lights and electrical outlets will be installed. This will all be paid for by the Fireman's Relief. And I do have on there, the city will install a new underground electrical, but that's actually part of the pavilion contract. I already talked to Corey, and that's part of the contract, so they'll be installing that, so it won't cost us anything. So, and the power will be underground, so we will have no more strings running across. Like I said, I put in here, the Fireman's Relief, the only thing they request that any insurance money received from the replacement of the roof gets put towards that project, so. Just, want your council's approval for them to go ahead and do that.
The park board's well aware of it and on board with this. It's a good, everybody pitching in, the fire department really helping out, so.
Okay, then we need a motion to move forward with the renovation of the fireman shelter as discussed. A motion by Eker, do we have a second? seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I do just have just one more thing, just kind of a ask for a go-ahead. I talked to Steve about this earlier in the week. So down at the shelter currently, I think since 2015, we've had free Wi-Fi. It was put up back when the data on your phones was really short. And currently that costs the city $120 a month, plus our cameras are hooked up to it, but I don't think there's only one police officer that ever used it. And that's $109 a month. So, and I did talk to, the last time we had some problems down there, the investigating officer said a lot of reasons why a lot of those kids hang out down there is because of the free Wi-Fi, and that's where we're having the most problems. So I'd kind of like to request that we remove that and get rid of it. And turn it off.
Anyone have any thoughts they want to share?
Go for it. Try it out. Save the $200 a month. I'll make the motion. Go ahead.
We have a motion by Moko. Do we have a second? Seconded by Eker. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ty. Next, under Police Department, we have Chief Eichten here to talk about a few different items.
Evening, everyone.
Evening.
I have 3 items on the agenda for tonight. Looks like the first one would be approval to hire a new part-time officer.
Mutual aid agreement first.
I also got a different overview. Let's grab this one when it came in. So you want to start with that one then? I had that one. This one was on the desk when I came in, so.
They have it first.
Okay.
So
All
it's
right.
mutual aid.
Well, pardon me. All right. Okay, forgot I said that. So the first item on the agenda tonight would be a mutual aid agreement with the city of Winthrop. As you all know, staffing shortages are abundant. Cities of Gaylord and Winthrop, sometimes we have to go without police coverage. Working together, city administrator from Gaylord here and Winthrop, and the chief from Winthrop and I got together, came up with a plan as far as a mutual aid agreement, which is attached here. Essentially, when one city doesn't have an officer working, we don't envision it happening very often, maybe once a month or twice a month if someone calls in sick or goes to training, and that city didn't have coverage for the night, then, if it was Gaylord, Winthrop would come over here. If they had an officer available, wasn't tied up on other calls, and would patrol the city, provide some presence in the city and vice versa. So basically the way it would work is, let's say somebody called in sick, get a hold of the chief over there, let him know, he'd let me know if they had somebody available tonight. That officer would keep track of the time he spent in our city, relay that to the chief, and then the following day the chief and I would talk and we'd document how many hours or how much time was spent in the neighboring cities, so that we would be hopefully equal. So attached is the proposal there, or I guess the mutual aid agreement. If anybody has any questions on that, I can try to answer them for you. Otherwise, I guess I'm just looking for approval to get that in place.
I did. The only thing I would add is perhaps we should put a term on the agreement. It looks like that's blank still.
I believe, talking, it should be up to 3 years if the council so wishes. I think that was the consensus with Winthrop.
All right, let's just fill that baby in then on the draft. So, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I think it's fine. It's just, we should have something in there.
I think this is a really good idea to handle when we're short-staffed, so that there is some coverage.
Yeah, we always talk about collaboration, so,
Yeah.
way to work this out, Charlie.
Yeah, I think it'll work well. I think it'll work nicely.
I do too. I think it's a good solution. So we're looking for a motion to approve the mutual aid agreement with the city of Winthrop effective March 21st, 2024, effective for 3 years. We have a motion by Eker. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. Any further discussion?
I just want to ask one thing. My only concern about this is what I talked to you about this morning, Chief, with regards to the sheriff's office and clarifying with them that they still are obligated by law that if somebody's not working in one of these respective cities, they are obligated to respond to calls for service, so that if somebody, for example, is working in Gaylord and Winthrop gets a 911 call, that the sheriff's office is responding. So
Right.
that conversation will happen with the sheriff's office.
Right, yeah, I spoke with Chief Anderson today. He's out of town this week for training, but he was in agreement that we were gonna have a conversation with the sheriff and let him know essentially what's going on and try and hash everything out. But we've talked with him before in the past, and he knows that their sheriff's office is responsible for emergency calls, and just wanna, like you said, clarify it that they'll still be doing that.
Because when we did, again, had that deal with Arlington going on, that was supposed to be the deal, that when we were in Arlington, that Gaylord would take the calls, and when we were not, the sheriff's office was supposed to take the calls, but that's not how they wanted it to work. So I just want to make sure that the sheriff's office understands that. And I don't know if Steve needs to also talk with the county administrator, so that point is clear that the sheriff's office still has an obligation in this to handle 911 emergency calls.
Right, and I mean, so far, the last, however, we've been short-staffed, they've been pretty good about it. And you know, with the Arlington deal, I mean, they didn't have a police department at all, so we were over there, you know, every day, all the calls. This is gonna be something, you know, sporadically here or there, maybe 1 or 2 days a month. So I don't envision it being a problem, but it's definitely a conversation that does need to happen.
Anything else? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Looks like next up on the agenda would be a new police pursuit policy. Earlier this year, January 25th, Minnesota Post Board approved a new model policy on police pursuits in the state of Minnesota. The statute requires that every state and local law enforcement agency establish and enforce a written policy for police pursuits. Not only that, but they said that the model policy, every agency's policy has to be identical or substantially similar to the model policy that they came up with. I didn't change anything, you know, no need to reinvent the wheel, so basically I just copied what the post board has for a new pursuit policy, and that's what's attached here, so.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve, adopting and implementing a new post-mandated policy on police pursuits.
We have a motion by Moko. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, moving on to hiring a part-time officer.
Yes, the last item is exactly that. As you know, we've been looking for a part-time officer for the last couple of years. We did have an application. Mr. Dan Koski, we interviewed him a few months ago. He currently works for the city of Henderson as a full-time officer. He started with them Halloween, I believe, of last year. Prior to that, he did have 4 years of full-time experience in a city with about 5,000 population. Being that he's worked there for less than 6 months in Henderson, the state says we can use his background, his psychological, his physical, and we don't have to redo all that with that cost. Officer Zimney did update his background since he's been in Henderson, went down there, you know, everything over the last few months, and talked to the chief, and he says he's a great officer and highly recommends him here. Talking with Officer Koski, he's very excited about this opportunity to come work for Gaylord and help us out as well. I guess being with his experience, instead of starting at step 1, I guess I'm requesting the council to start him at step 2, which is grade 13, step 2 of the hourly wage there listed.
We're looking for a motion to hire Dan Koski as a part-time police officer starting March 23rd at a starting wage of grade 13, step 2.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Padilla, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, don't have anything else for the rest of our departments, so we will move to new business. Resolution number 2024-14, denying Synergies Gaylord LLC petition for rezoning, and I will turn that over to Steve.
Okay, I'll do a kind of a summary here of the Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting from last week. They did hold a public hearing on the petition for rezoning that was submitted from Synergen Gaylord LLC and also from the owner of Apex Farms, Max Eckberg. Max is present this evening, and he was also present at the public hearing. On behalf of Synergen at the public hearing, Larry Newman was present. I don't believe he's here this evening, though. So the public hearing was held again on, this was last Wednesday, March 13th. Basically, they're applying to rezone the property just on the east end of Highway 5. There is a legal description in the resolution of the property. But again, Apex Farms owns the property. They're proposing to develop a solar garden there, a community solar garden, up to 4.9 megawatts in size. Currently, the property is located outside the city. It abuts the city limits, but it does fall within our orderly annexation boundary area, and that's why we have zoning jurisdiction over this particular request or this property. Currently, the property is zoned I-2, which is our medium industrial district. Proposed is to rezone it to the ag or agricultural / rural residence district, which is currently where we allow for solar gardens as a conditional use. One thing to note here, and it was noted at the public hearing as well, is that right now our zoning map and also our comprehensive plan, the future land use map that's within the comp plan, there is an existing discrepancy, meaning that currently our zoning map has the property zoned as I-2, but our comprehensive plan has it guided towards rural reserve, there is a definition in here, but basically it's rural, residential, or agricultural in nature. We're not sure why that exists, why there's a discrepancy. The comp plan was updated, I believe, in 2019. The zoning at that time was still where it is currently for that property. We've been speculating that it might have been an oversight. We're just uncertain as why there is a discrepancy there. Mark tonight will address the discrepancy part of it and what the city would need to do, so I'll leave that for him. But basically, again, the public hearing was held, public comment was received, questions, etc. The planning and zoning then, after the hearing, they closed the hearing, so they completed the public hearing, and then they went into a discussion themselves. Basically, their recommendation was a vote to deny the rezoning request. Located within the resolution is the reasons that they had provided, and I'll read those quick, I think. Let's get to it. You have it handy? Thank you. Okay, pardon me. Okay, number one, there were 6 reasons, and I'll go through them real quick here, and you can ask questions if you need. First of all, the vision for future of that location for commercial and industrial growth along Highway 5. So that was a consideration. That was one of the things that they talked about. What was desirable, basically, as far as where they would see that property developing, what's the best use for it, so to speak. The Highway 5 gateway to the community, there was a discussion about, what do we want the impression of the community to be as people are driving into the community. They felt that a business use on that property would be more visually appealing versus a solar garden. There was also Justin Black from SEH was present to go over MnDOT's plan to reconfigure the Highway 5 and 19 intersection. And so Justin went through that and basically explained that the option that was chosen actually does skirt, Highway 19 does go through this property partially. And so there was a concern about, we want to make sure that that property is going to be available for that purpose in the future. Next one, number 4, was the current limit amount of industrial property available in the community for development. So by rezoning this property, that means there's just one less location for potential industrial development. Next one was number 5 here, extending utilities to the east for future growth on the south side of the highway would have to pass by the subject property in order to serve any properties to the east. And in this case, if it's a solar garden, there would be no use for water and sewer services. And so we'd be basically passing by that property without any return on the investment, at least for the life of the solar garden, which they report it would be for 25 years. And then lastly, it was suggested there would be better other local locations for a community solar garden for development. They did mention at the hearing, Larry Newman was the gentleman who was representing Synogen at the meeting, and he did state that one of the challenges that they do have when they're looking for prospective sites for a solar garden is it has to have an Excel feeder line. And I think that becomes a little challenging at times for them, or it becomes a challenge. And so that was one of the things that he had anyway shared, that's why they had chosen this site, was it actually has a feeder line available. So those were the reasons, again, that it was denied by the, I should say it was recommended for denial by the Planning and Zoning Commission to the council. With that, I'll open it up to any questions from me. There are, as you can see, there's representatives of the applicant here this evening. Again, the public hearing has been held, so it is your I guess your option as far as how much you want others to speak. So the public testimony component of this process has been completed, but you certainly, can open it up as well, as much as you desire for them to allow to give more comments about their proposal.
Before we open up for comments, are there any questions or comments from council?
I think that in these cases, whenever we get recommendations from committees that we have underneath us, majority of the time that we always take those recommendations because they spend a lot of time and energy reviewing these types of things. So I think that they came up with they did a lot of hard work to come up with the decision that they made. So for me, it's going to be extremely hard to go against their recommendations.
I agree. If there's, I know there's a large group of you to talk, if you could maybe designate a spokesperson and keep it to, 5 minutes or under, just because the public hearing is already behind us, that would be great. So whoever wants to speak can come to the podium, identify themselves.
I'll keep it quick. Good evening. My name is Max Eckberg, and I'm a partner with Apex Farms LLC, along with my sister Megan Bullard, who's present. We each have young families in the area and own and operate local businesses along with our spouses. Both mine and Megan's families are actively involved in churches, communities, and the school. So far in our relatively short adult lives, we have donated a lot of time, money, and resources to this area. Last week's planning and zoning meeting was a major disappointment. It was obvious from the start that a member of the board was opposed to the idea of a solar array along with the city administrator. The administrator talked for over 30 minutes about pie-in-the-sky ideas that may or may not take place somewhere in the distant future. There was no mention of anything positive from him about developing solar and what it can do for a community. Production tax and tax credits from these arrays could be as much as $20,000 to $30,000
per year. Also, the state of Minnesota has a new law requiring 100% of electricity to be produced from carbon-free resources by 2040. This solar project would fit the bill. By the time the city administrator was done bashing our current opportunity for solar, the board could not even figure out how to hold a vote on the matter. It took the city attorney to stand up and explain several times what they were motioning for, and I believe the committee members were so confused that they didn't know which way they were voting. The zoning of the I-2 on this property was set up sometime in the 1970s. That's 50 years ago. Many other things have changed since then, but one thing has stayed the same, and that's the ground has been farmed or pasture land. Because of the railroad, the odd shape of the piece, and the proximity to our building site, there is almost no chance of an industrial project on this land that we own. As far as the Highway 19 reroute, there's no issue with arranging the solar layout around what might eventually happen. After speaking with a MnDOT representative, she said the earliest this reroute project would take place would be 2029 or 2030. And it would only involve the furthest west 1 to 2 acres. The solar project can be moved, altered to meet MnDOT's requirements, and solar is also removable if needed. To conclude, please reconsider the error in the zoning and planning committee's vote. As a young businessman in Gaylord, I would like to see this project happen. There are many positives for myself as well as the community. $20,000 to $30,000 per year in new taxes and tax credits, removing poor farmland from my operation, and providing the area with renewable energy is what should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Rogers. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Larkin Hoffman. And we were retained by Synergen after the Planning Commission's hearing last week. And I'm hoping to just have an opportunity to talk with you all tonight about some of the reasons that the city administrator listed for denying this project, and why we really encourage you to reconsider adopting the Planning Commission's findings and moving forward with this project. So first and foremost, I understand that there is confusion with city staff about why this project was guided rural reserve instead of the industrial use. And that was changed in your 2040 comp plan. Some of the reasons that I could speculate would be just as Max suggested, that it's been adjacent to an industrial property for over 50 years and has been farmed for 120. And there just hasn't been a market for development of industrial uses on the site. And we think that this site is unique for a number of reasons to serve this particular community resource as a community solar garden. Number one, it's removable. It can be the proposed roundabout, any of the development with regards to the intersection of Highway 5 and Highway 19 can be accommodated on this site pursuant to MnDOT's plans. It can be easily incorporated into a condition of approval on the conditional use permit associated with this use. And it doesn't, and then it forecloses future access for future uses along the way. I think one of the things that Larry from Synergen mentioned is that the financial cost of solar panels really decreases substantially over the first 10 years. While they can be used for up to 25 years and are renewable and generate energy for that period of time, and that's the period of lease that we would seek to enter into with Max and his family. After 10 years, it becomes financially feasible if you have another user to come in and purchase out those solar uses and to sell out the remainder of the lease. So we would suggest to you that this does not foreclose industrial development. In fact, this is consistent with your comprehensive plan. It preserves the land, it allows the soil to heal, to recover. Right now, the soil is not productive for farming uses. And that's one of the really significant benefits of solar, is that it allows for soil recovery, it allows for preservation and non-intense development of your overall land use while you're seeking the what comes next for your city. And that lines up with what you've anticipated your future uses to be through that 2040 deadline of your comprehensive plan. We would also, and I submitted, and I appreciate the work of the city administrator and the city attorney of providing you all with the letter that we submitted. We reviewed the record from the Planning Commission, and they raised a number of legal arguments in there, which we provided to you earlier. I'm happy to answer any of those questions and would strongly recommend further conversation. We stand ready as a community partner with solar arrays in multiple states. I think one of the considerations that the Planning Commission had was what will it look like at the gateway to the city? Will it have a significant sort of visual impact? Number one, when you take a look at the railroad right-of-way there, there's a real significant swale that dips down into the land. And if you look at the Minnesota DNR's topographical survey, the land actually sits below the Highway 5 right-of-way. So it's really, in that situation, from a development perspective, the installation of a berm along the railroad right-of-way will screen all of the solar arrays from view. And Synergen is committed to green energy as well as green development. And so we stand ready to work with your city staff to do tree installation, berming, things that you think would improve the visual aspect of that area as you enter into the city. And we recognize that's an important commitment that we can make as part of this application. So happy to answer any questions that you may have and very much appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn here, and I'll try and keep it brief. But I was at the Planning Commission meeting last week, and basically there are two applications here. To the extent that it's not clear, there's an application to rezone the property from what it's designated as now, as I-2, medium industrial. And that was the first thing that was considered by the Planning Commission. And the second application is for a conditional use permit under the agricultural zoning designation, essentially approving the solar garden array as a conditional use. And so the Planning Commission held a public hearing for both, but it took under consideration first the rezoning from industrial to agriculture. And both, or I guess I should say myself, City Administrator Steve Helgett, and Justin Black, the city engineer, all presented on a variety of different matters. And ultimately, the recommendation of the Planning Commission was to recommend a denial of the rezoning on the basis that Steve mentioned earlier. And so I guess here we stand. The conditional use permit was also recommended for denial, but on the basis that, given that the recommendation was not to rezone it, in the industrial I-2 medium industrial zoning district, solar garden arrays are not a conditional use. So that's the basis of the recommendation on the CUP. With regard to the rezoning, I guess it's worth mentioning what the legal standard is here. What is the threshold that the city needs to make sure it keeps in mind so that we're moving forward one way or the other with a proper legal basis. And so anytime we're reviewing a land use decision like this, a rezoning application, so we're just thinking about the rezoning right now, the courts will utilize a rational basis test, which requires any decision to be supported by a rational basis related to promoting public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And I should say, relative to other legal standards, this is among probably the most deferential legal standards, at least to the city in this case. And so what ultimately the Planning Commission recommended, the ultimate denial recommendation, was based upon a finding that the rezoning would adversely affect public safety, morals, and the general welfare of the city based upon industrial development being better suited in light of impending road infrastructure, the lack of industrial developable properties in the city, generally speaking, more favorable locations for the solar garden, certain complexities that Steve mentioned in extending utilities, and the other factors listed. And so it is my recommendation to the council that I believe that this is a rational basis to make a land use decision. So I believe, and it's my direction to the council, that if the council is inclined to deny this, rezoning application, that there is a sufficient legal basis to do it. With regard to concerns that the city's long-range planning, the comprehensive plan, doesn't line up with our zoning code, more particularly our zoning map, that's a little bit trickier discussion. In the metro area, the 7-county metro area, there is a state law that requires some, I won't go into all the details, but basically there's an additional step that is included in comprehensive planning. And that includes submitting plans to the Metropolitan Council for comment, and there is a law requiring that land use ordinances, including the land use zoning map, align with comprehensive plan. So there needs to be, they need to align with each other. Obviously, in this case, the City of Gaylord's land use plan or comprehensive plan does not align with our zoning code. But there's no clear legal obligation for the city's zoning decisions to be based upon what is found in the comprehensive plan. We're not subject to Metropolitan Planning Act. We're not part of the 7-county metro area, and so comprehensive planning in communities like Gaylord is done on more of a pervasive basis. We don't have to necessarily follow it. Now, we invested a lot of money in this plan, and it is good practice, and it's my recommendation that we fix the discrepancy between the comprehensive plan and the land use ordinance based upon essentially what the decision is tonight. And so to the extent that the decision is to approve this solar garden array, well then the fix is, I guess, approved tonight. To the extent that the decision is to deny the application for rezoning, then I think the next step is to direct the Planning Commission to update the comprehensive plan so that there isn't the divergence that we're seeing today. And we're not, I guess, sending mixed messages to people in the community. So that is where we stand. Just by nature of the discrepancy, the city is not obligated to move in any one direction. And a motion to deny this rezoning application should be on the basis of the rational basis test we talked about. Does anybody have any questions for me? Although I should state one more thing, that because the rezoning application, like I said, was recommended for denial, that is the basis for denying the conditional use permit. Simply that if the property will remain zoned industrial I-2, then it's pretty clear that it is not a proper conditional use. So that's the basis that appears in the resolution. If council feels inclined to approve the rezoning, my recommendation is for council to extend the zoning decision deadline out and for essentially the council to send it back to the Planning Commission to actually go through all of the conditional use permit requirements that appear in the ordinance. And obviously that didn't happen because the zoning didn't align. So either way, I wouldn't recommend moving forward on the conditional use permit tonight. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I got one, Mark. I wasn't present at that meeting, but the plan and zoning meeting. Is it true or not that the new piece of information then tonight is that they're communicating, they would be able to set up the solar garden in a manner to allow for future infrastructure improvements? That is one of the main city's concerns here. Was the planning and zoning board was not aware of that?
I mean, I think in my mind, that's part of the process that would probably fall under the conditional use permit approval, figuring out ways to mitigate the impact on the surrounding community from a visual perspective. And I guess I think it was actually brought up by the applicants, and there was a lot of information thrown out there. But certainly if the council wants to approve the rezoning, then that's the main reason why I would recommend sending the CUP application back to the Planning Commission so that they can consider that in a little bit more detail. Again, those factors didn't get considered in detail because it was so cut and dry that simply the conditional use doesn't appear under industrial uses.
if we were to change this, let me get this straight, we'd be going against you, going against our city engineer and our city administrator and the board.
So I guess if you were to approve the rezoning, it would be contrary to the recommendation by the planning commission. To be clear, what I am stating here is that there is a legal basis to deny this based upon how this proceeding has unfolded. And so there certainly is also a legal basis to approve it, I suppose. But in terms of if the council acting in its discretion decides that it wants to deny the rezoning application, what I'm saying is there is a legal basis for that.
I like it when you say yes or no.
Okay. It's very tough for a lawyer to answer things yes or no.
Again, I just kind of, I'm not trying to take away anybody's livelihood. I just go back to the fact that the people that we entrust to take up these types of incidents that, you know, they're the ones that we put on these committees. They looked at this and they said, this isn't a good idea. And we very rarely go against, I can't remember a time that we've gone against them and done something against what they recommend for any of these boards. Along with that, how many times have solar gardens gone in and we not had tons of people come in here that were very upset about the solar gardens coming in. Every time it happens, there's groups of people that come in and are extremely upset about them coming in. So now we're looking at adding another solar garden to our community, which it seems like they're everywhere as it is. So I agree with the committee's work that they did. I don't think that they took this on and looked at it without, you know, putting their time and good effort into it. So I'm in favor of supporting their decision. So I'll make a motion to deny the resolution for rezoning.
So to be clear, the motion would be motion to deny the application for rezoning and the conditional use permit.
Actually, if I may, the motion would
Oh,
be
excuse me.
to approve the resolution.
Correct.
24-14, a resolution denying Synergen Gaylord LLC petition for rezoning.
That's it. Based on the rational bias outlined by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We have a motion made by Padilla. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Eker. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Not opposed. For.
Okay. Motion's carried. Okay, so moving on to 11B. This is the motion denying the conditional use permit. Just gotta get to the right page.
I'll make that motion.
So we need a motion to approve resolution 2024-15, denying Syngent Gaylord LLC conditional use permit.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so Groko made that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to 11C, farmland rental contracts, and I will turn that over to Steve.
Wait, don't we have to do something with the comprehensive plan to send that back? to planning?
Oh, yeah, so do we need a motion to send?
I think if we're gonna do anything formal, probably just wait till the next meeting to formally send it back to the
Okay.
planning commission.
Okay, thanks.
In the haste of figuring all this stuff out, I guess we didn't have that stuff totally ready for but that will be on the next council meeting.
Okay, sounds good. We will plan for that the next meeting.
But it is a breathing, living document that gets changed continuously.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next is, now we'll move on to 11C, the farmland rental contracts. I'll let Steve update us on that.
Okay, thank you. As you've seen from my memo, our contract with Jacob, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Scholstrom, thank you. Expired at the end of last year. It was a 3-year agreement. And you may recall from last year, he had actually submitted a proposal to increase the rent by 5%, and if the council elected not to go out for quotes. The one question that was remaining was whether or not the council was going to sell the land out by the ponds. And because we were waiting to have everybody present at a council meeting, it took a little bit longer to make that decision. So the council earlier back in January decided not to sell that land and use those proceeds for the 2024 street improvement project. So with that said, we still have these 3 parcels, and I list them all 3 in the memo. And he did come back to me recently and state that he is withdrawing his 5% quote that he made last year, simply because of the performance, the farm performance that it did last year on the land. So he did submit an email to me with a new proposal. It does, I will say, bring down the wastewater treatment pond land. Ty has told me that it is not very good farmland out there. He believes that when they were digging those ponds, a lot of that material went right on where the farmland is right now. And so it's probably not the best land for farming. And so he did decrease that one somewhat below where he's at currently. The current rate right now that we get for that land is we were getting was $210 per acre. So he lowered it significantly down. The other 2 parcels, the industrial park, that's also at $210 an acre. And then school addition, that's at $250. Those he left pretty close to the same thing, what they're currently at. My dilemma with not providing that information to you is if you elect to go out for quotes, then I'm sharing what his quotes were. But if you do ask me, I will probably share it tonight, and if it helps you make your decision on what you want to do, since he did provide that information to me.
Everybody else knows now, Steve.
Excuse me?
Everybody else knows now what his bids are.
Well, I didn't share. Those were the past rates.
Oh.
That was the last year's contract rates.
We know it's marginal out there.
Yeah, it was a terrible year
And,
last year.
and the other pieces are chopped up. I mean,
I will say this, according to Ty, he's been a really good farmer.
I'll make a motion to remain Jacob
Scholstrom. Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Eker and seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion? Were you going to say something?
So you're looking at renewing it for another 3 years then, with him?
sure.
Okay, well then with that said, if that's the motion on the table, then I'll go ahead and share what he was proposing. If that's acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. So then for the wastewater ponds, again, last year's rate was $210. He's proposing to go down to $150. The industrial park acreage, that would be over by Shoreview Lane. It was at $210. He's proposing to go to $215. And over here by the school, by Lincoln Avenue, it was $250. He's proposing to go down to $240.
Okay. Let's move forward.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next, moving to MnDOT 2026 Highways 212 and 15 roundabout project.
Sorry.
And detour, Highway 22 detour.
We were contacted recently by Alliant Engineering, who is representing MnDOT for a project planned for 2026. They are planning to install or develop a roundabout at the intersection of Highways 212 and 15. And they're proposing then that intersection would be enclosed then because of construction. So they're proposing to detour all the traffic onto Highway 22, which would ultimately pass through Gaylord here. So first of all, I think first and foremost, they were inquiring to see if there was any concerns about that they should be made aware of. And then secondly, they shared that they would be willing to repaint or restripe the crosswalk lines on Highway 22 as they are inside the city limits. And then they also stated that they would be willing to approach MnDOT and ask if they could go ahead and remove those crosswalk flashing lights by the old school there. That at this point, they're not necessary anymore. We would, if the council agrees to that, staff would recommend that we would retain those just for possible usage in the future. And then lastly, this is something coming from staff that we would ask them, MnDOT to install a speed sign at 10th Street for the duration of the contract or project, I should say. So those are, I guess, things for your consideration this evening.
At where? 10th Street?
10th Street. So way at the end, I guess.
So when people are coming into town.
So
More
as they're coming into town, just a
You
reminder
mean
to slow
north,
down.
north
North
Avenue.
end, yes.
The north, it's North Avenue. You're coming in on the state highway,
Yeah,
so the first street would be North Avenue or North Street.
okay, okay.
Right, that's where you're talking.
They're just, yeah, they're just.
I'm talking to north end on
Okay.
22, as it comes into
Yeah.
town. So sorry if I missed.
Nope, we got it. Okay, so you just want consensus?
Yes, I just need to get back to them then with a response.
I think all those suggestions sound fair.
Agree.
So we have Highway 15 traffic coming on over through Gaylord, yeah, along the pool and going out towards Winthrop on 19.
What are they gonna do with that? I mean, how's that gonna work? If that closing that roundabout, how are they gonna get on? Where are they getting on 22 at? You know what I mean?
They won't get to 20, they won't get that
No.
far. They'll
You would-
reroute them at 22. They'll close it off right before 20, right
They're
after
going
22.
through city of Brownton,
Oh.
through town.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Okay. Yep, yep.
Did I say all that, Justin, since he's here? Maybe you could.
Yes, yeah, I reviewed it also, and the conditions that Steve mentioned seemed reasonable. There will be more traffic that summer with the detours, but they're detouring on their own state highway, so we can't ask for much more from that perspective. That highway was built for state highway traffic, and that's what it's gonna have on it, so from that sense, it's reasonable.
Can we get a permanent sign, Justin?
A permanent, it's something that we can look into after the project and maybe see how this performs, but, what we're looking at is one of those signs that shows your speed and if you're speeding.
Take it
So I
away.
think this would be a good test run to see, how something like that works, and if it slows traffic down, we could definitely approach MnDOT in the future about installing something permanent.
Yep.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have just because our park is there, make sure people are coming
Well,
into town slow.
would it be worth, at least on the front end, asking if, instead of the city footing the whole bill later, what if the city would go half and half with MnDOT on the front end here? I mean,
I think that's something Steve and I could go back to them and
Worth asking.
propose, rather than something temporary, something more permanent, and then leave it in after the project. So it's definitely something we can propose to them, but, yes, Steve, Ty, and I sat down, looked at the conditions, and it seems reasonable.
Yeah. We have that one on 20, or on Brewery Road when you come into town. Every once in a while, somebody tries to get a high score, but for the most part, it's really worked at slowing cars down.
Yeah.
So, that'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So it's probably a positive that might come out of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Is that good enough for consensus or anything else? Okay, let's move on to 11E, Abdo Financial Plan Update Proposal.
So in your packet is Abdo's proposal to go ahead and update our 2023 through 28 financial plan. Last year, the fee was, for 2023 to update it was $6,000. They have updated that to $8,000. I did have a conversation with Tom Olinger, who's one of the partners of the firm, and he's been out here. He basically said that, like a lot of places, they're struggling with staff as well. And so that's a big part of it is just the cost of staff to do these kind of services has gone up substantially. Because I was a little taken back, I guess, by a $2,000 jump in one single year. And that was the main thing that he said, that it's become more and more challenging. There's some services that they've had to scale back on because of staffing. And this is certainly not something new. We hear this across the board. But that's their proposal for next year, or for this year's update. So we do have the extra monies in our budget for this, so we would be able to cover this. I do put a little bit extra in for professional financial services, just in case something comes up during the year that we need to hire a consultant for that was unknown at the time when we adopted the budget.
I thought I just saw a book that said they went through 27 with Abdo's name on it. That's not right. No?
Well, the plan, I think, goes through 2028, but we do yearly updates.
Oh, okay.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'll make that motion to approve the Abdo financial plan update proposal in the amount of $8,000.
We have a motion by Padilla. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, if there's nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn. Motion
Second.
by Eager, seconded by Padilla. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Steve.